We're about news, commentary, conversations, truth, liberty, and God. We stand for American values and our flag. We believe that the Constitution is a document that fortifies rights already given to us by our Creator. We will not apologize for our love of God and country, ever. We are Right America Media.
Don't forget, the opinions expressed on this show are those of the host, guests, and callers, and not necessarily those of Right America Media, its ownership, or management. That's right, we have to give you a little bit of a disclaimer. Because we may say some things that offend somebody's delicate sensitivities. But that's why you tune in. Because we don't candy coat anything. Because the vast majority of you out there don't need the extra calories. Welcome to a brand spanking new edition of Granite State Live. It is great to have you along on this Tuesday evening, the 21st day of October, 2025. I am your host, Keith Hansen, the unapologetic contrarian conservative, heavily armed as always, never apologizing for my toxic white masculinity since I was born with it. My doctors consider it a pre-existing condition. Never apologizing for my Christian faith. If you'd like to be a part of tonight's program, 833-603-8255. That's 833-603-TALK. And if you'd like to have your mug featured as well, you can participate through the magic of live video. Just send an email to granitestatelive@gmail.com. Put the words video link in the subject line. And Juan and the rest of our production team, extensive as they are, will figure out whose responsibility it is to zap that link out to you, and they will get that to you lickety-split.
And as usual, the blue-collar intellectual, I'm here to shatter your preconceived notions and all the bullshit you've been fed by influencers on both sides of the aisle, because guess what? They lied to you for profit, and you ate it up.
Stop using that word, influencers.
Influencers.
I'm an influencer. I heard somebody say that. I'm an influencer, and they wanted like a discount. I'm an influencer, so give me a discount. Like, how about a size 10.5 straight up the ass? That's what you should. I hate social media so much. TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. I hate it. Hate it. I've said this before, and I will say this again. When the alien race comes down and performs the autopsy on humanity, the cause of death, suicide. The manner of death, social media.
And on that note, I have a book that is going to be coming up soon called The Algorithmic Abyss, so you can learn how social media is destroying your life.
Oh, that wasn't even intended to be a segue, but that's how it worked out.
Hey, it worked out perfect. I mean, I finished the book. I'm just haven't started the publishing process yet.
All right, got a great show coming up for you tonight. Joining us at 7:30 is Michael Pack. He's the producer and director of The Last 600 Meters. That is a documentary looking back at the Iraq War that is actually scheduled to be broadcast nationally on PBS, of all things. Wow, public broadcasting. On the eve of Veterans Day, November 10th, 2025. That'll be airing at 10 p.m. Michael is the president of Manifold Productions. Among some of his other works, interestingly enough, Created Equal, Clarence Thomas in his own words. There was a 2-hour documentary that opened in movie theaters in 2020 was broadcast nationally on PBS. The Washington Post called it, quote, a marvel of filmmaking, and the Washington Examiner called it magnificent and necessary. Interesting. All right, coming up at 8 o'clock, we're going to be talking about, and we're going to be joined by, this is an interesting conversation. Juan, our producer, I have to admit, I was kind of like, I wasn't sleeping. I was resting my eyes in the green room couch. And he comes over and he says, what about a sheriff's deputy who can't get a gun because he's a DACA kid? And I have to admit, I think I was only on maybe, 2 cold brews, ice cold brews. So I said, you know what? That's going to be an interesting conversation. And you can't see the production table right now, but our esteemed producer is sitting back like this with his hands behind his head with this look of satisfaction. What can you jump on the mic and explain, because you have this look on your face as if like, all right, Hanson, we got you now. What's up with that?
Can you hear me? There we go.
Yeah, there we go.
Okay. Oh, no, it's not a gotcha at all. It's just very interesting. Now how we put everything out there, very conservative. But not everything is black or white, Sometimes you have to look at the human story.
Why is it always got to be black and white with you? You racist?
Black and white or brown. How about
that? You can't see our producer. He's Puerto Rican, so I mean, I've got to rib him a little bit. So, have I ever said a racist thing?
Never.
Have you ever heard me once say a racist thing?
Nope.
No.
Not at all.
Why is it that I get accused of being a racist, white supremacist shock jock? I mean, I get the shock jock thing.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, if you haven't figured it out, talk media is all about ratings. So, we say things that are a little bit controversial. But have I ever said anything?
Nope. I've been with you for quite a few years.
I don't think you would be with me if it were to the contrary.
Well, I mean, you may say a few things here and there, but I still would be here with you.
Okay, but I mean, not not like
it has never. You have never said anything racist since we started working together.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that. So.
And maybe it's just because I don't know. I don't care about the color of a person's skin. I care about who they are as a person, whether or not they're a person of honor and integrity. I just bring that up because I was having a conversation with somebody who, they stepped into the way back machine for this one, but. New Hampshire State Senator Deborah Alt-Schittler. And I know, yes, I'm purposely mispronouncing her name. It's Deborah Alt-Schiller, but, hey, listen, you know what? Debbie, if the pantsuit fits, buy it, right? And she, she came out and accused me of being a white supremacist because I called her Deborah Alt-Schittler. And I remember actually I got a phone call from a reporter up in, I think it was either Lebanon or Claremont or what it was. And they said, do you want to respond to this? And I said, no. I mean, I said it, and so, so I said, well, first of all, it was a triple entendre, really. It's a play on her name. But then again, the Nazi-esque policies that she embraces, I figured, Hitler would be a pretty good alteration of her name. And to be honest with you, I kind of think she's a sack of excrement, so it kind of fits perfectly. And then so the reporter went on to say, well, what would you say about accusations of racism? And I said, well, you can take those accusations of racism and you can pound them straight up your ass. And do you know what? And I said, and you can quote me on that. And the next morning in print, he actually did quote me on that. I was kind of surprised. I'm like, wow, man, it must be a slow news day up here in the Dartmouth Lake Sunapee region if that's what we have to post. But anyway, so this is going to be an interesting segment. Deputy Edgar Vasquez Silva is, from what I'm reading here, is currently a sheriff's deputy, but he's not qualified to have a firearm.
That is correct.
Okay. So was his firearm initially issued to him as a sheriff's deputy and then taken away?
It was issued, during training, and then they figured out he was a DACA, therefore they took it away. He actually got dismissed, I believe, from training, and then he was brought back.
Okay, so is he currently a certified sworn law enforcement officer today?
Yes, he is.
Yes. Okay. Interestingly enough, so we're going to have this conversation with Deputy Silva. That'll be coming up at 8 p.m. And then at 8:30, we're going to be talking about the UN's global reach, how global institutions like the United Nations are shaping international power, with Wayne Morrow, our good friend, as the Chief Executive Officer of the John Birch Society. He'll be joining us at 8 o'clock. So I wanted to ask you, did you go to a No Kings rally? What did you do this weekend on Saturday?
I was actually doing the opposite of what they do over there in the No Kings Row. I was actually working.
Oh, you were working. Oh, okay. All right. Yeah. Interestingly enough, did you happen to go to a No Kings rally?
No, I spend my time with my family doing stuff worthwhile.
Worthwhile things. Okay. So I guess evidently when you look at all of the rallies and all of the gatherings across the country, it was and I'll give you let me give you a multiple choice test here. The majority, and we're talking approximately 60%, when you look at all of the attendees of the No Kings rally, were they A, college students between the ages of 18 and 21? Were they B, mixed between male and female between 30 and 40? Were they white males between the ages of 45 and 60? Or were they white females between the ages of 55 and 70?
Well, let's take a look. I don't know. Let's see.
Those definitely look like retired school teachers. There they are. There they are. I love it. First of all, I do have to say, I do like the chant. Talk about keeping it simple. We're talking one-syllable words. There is no possibility that we're going to, no kings, no kings, no kings. Did they sit up all night thinking about that? Amazing.
Yep, I think so.
Amazing. And I like the last one because it looks like we've got the 65-year-old emaciated retired school teacher who is leading the rally. That's a lot of cellulite in that crowd. Wow. So I love the 55 to like 70-year-old. They're awfuls, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't heard that term, awful is an acronym for angry white female liberal. And we've talked about Maslow's hierarchy of needs many, many times before, and the need to self-actualize and to be all that one can be. And we've talked about how the vast majority of people in this country are drug addicts. We're all drug addicts. We're all addicted to that little dopamine hit that we get when we do something good, or when somebody praises us, or somebody validates our efforts, and we find solidarity with other people. And this is exactly what drives these idiots to do what they do. It's the validation. I'm angry. I'm pissed off. I saw a cute little meme the other day that, not that I wasn't on social media, somebody sent this to me, and they said basically No Kings is a loose translation into I'm pissed off because I didn't get my way, which I think is pretty appropriate, but that notwithstanding. The validation and the sense of well-being that comes when people embrace and adopt and further and perpetrate these movements. There is a sense of well-being. There is a sense of euphoria. There is a sense of camaraderie. There is a sense that I'm doing God's work. As a matter of fact, there's actually a term for that. People have often asked, why is Mamdani in New York going to most likely win. And many people have said it's because of the liberal Jewish population in New York City. And what's really, really interesting about that is a concept in Judaism called Tikkun Olam, which is make the world a better place and leave it a better place than what you found it. We've talked about exegesic and eisegesic interpretations of terms, and I think that's really a perfect example of this. It's a bastardization of that concept. Remember that the devil can quote scripture for his own purpose. So, to go to a group of people who have a underlying philosophical, socio-religious mandate to leave the world better than what they found it, makes sense that they would be exploited. And then you have people like Mamdani, who is most likely going to become the mayor of New York and will destroy it. Because that's what progressives and liberals do. They destroy everything that they touch. But these people who now take their time, of course it's, Saturday. They're taking their time rather than spending time with their family, which, assuming based upon the demographics of the majority of people that were attending, not all, but, a lot of the people that were there, their kids are presumably gone. They're empty nesters, and they need something to do with their life, and they need something to do with their time. And so being liberal educators, a lot of them are, they embrace these leftist movements. And they get acceptance, and they get validation, and they get the dopamine hits from the people who surround them. Oh, you're doing such a good job. More dopamine, I feel good. Wow, you're such you're fighting for the cause. More dopamine, I feel good. Which, by the way, is the exact same technique that they use to recruit young college kids. While the Democrats embrace young people because they recognize the power of the useful idiot, the Republican Party says even if you're 50 years old, they're still too young and you don't know enough. Remember that quote, Alan Glassman? I do. But the Democrats will go to an 18 or 19 or 20-year-old person and say, hey, you know what? You have more power. You're smarter. You're more able-bodied. You're more intelligent. And you're more motivated than your boomer parents give you credit for being. And you're going to change the world. Ooh, more dopamine. That feels good. It's that self-actualization. Actually, interestingly enough, with self-actualization, Abraham Maslow, who developed that model, the very, very top was self-actualization, developed that formula while spending a period of time with the Blackfoot Nation. Self-actualization is not actually what Abraham Maslow arrived at. You see, in studying the Blackfoot Nation, Abraham Maslow realized that the highest form of achievement that members of that community could possibly arrive at, they could possibly make manifest, is to become as the creator, had intended. As the creator, God, had intended. The problem was Abraham Maslow was an atheist, and he couldn't make mention of a creator at the top of his organizational chart. So it became self-actualization. Another way to look at this is be all that you can be, but make no mention of a higher power because I don't believe in that. At least Abraham Maslow didn't. So on and on and on and on and on and on we go. The No Kings rallies continue. And now this is an interesting little tidbit that came out today on Axios. I don't have the quote up, so I can't give you the headline verbatim. But a judge in Chicago, Illinois, has authorized the arrest of ICE agents who detain illegal immigrants without a warrant. Wonder how that's going to work out for them. A person who is sworn to enforce federal immigration law could now potentially be arrested for doing their job in Chicago, Illinois. And it's amazing because this gigantic pot of wet spaghetti that Democrats are throwing at the wall to see what will stick. J.B. Pritzker in Illinois. And certainly Gavin Newsom in California. By the way, if you're looking for just some comic relief, might I suggest following Gavin Newsom on Twitter. Yeah, I know it's X, but, for some of us who are resistant to change, it will always be Twitter. Gavin Newsom is running a campaign against a man who will not be running for president in 2028. It's comical. And as a matter of fact, the advisors on Newsom's campaign, for lack of a better term, have now decided that if you can't beat them, join them. So the tactics, the techniques that Donald Trump used, certainly during his first presidential campaign, and to a lesser degree during his second presidential campaign, these are the same tactics that are being employed by Gavin Newsom. Because, imitation is the greatest form of flattery. It's kind of amazing for somebody who hates Trump, or who claims to hate Trump as viscerally as he does. Well, you know what? His tactics and his methodologies are good enough to be copied, replicated. It's not even a hat tip. This is these posts, these tactics, this campaign that he's running on social media. The page is literally ripped out of the playbook from Donald Trump. We're going to be going to commercial break here in just a couple of minutes, but before we do that, and speaking of campaigns, the Senate race here in New Hampshire heating up with rumors now that John Sununu will be jumping into the ring. Care to opine on this one there, Julian?
Oh, well, it'll end up being as expected. Many people are going to jump on the Sununu bandwagon because his name is pretty much like a Kennedy or a Bush in this state. Strategically, I saw him at the Salem GOP meeting, and I didn't see anything special that would make me think that he's the guy that can win this race. Now, granted, I'm biased. Scott Brown is a friend of mine. And by friend, I don't just mean acquaintance. I mean, I drink beers with him, drink bourbon with him, smoke cigars, and actually know the man.
You guys have pillow fights in your underwear, too?
No.
Okay.
No.
All right.
But we do.
You would if you were females, though, right?
But we do occasionally go cow tipping and stuff together.
Okay, well, that's good.
But I look at the race and I see one guy has energy and has some fight in him, and I see another guy basically trying to retread the talking points of the past. I didn't see anything at the meeting that led me to believe that he's the guy that's going to be able to do it.
So you know him. So let me ask you this. I want to pop up a screenshot here from the New Hampshire Journal. This is from yesterday's New Hampshire Journal. Came out last night. Quote, Senate seats are earned, not handed down. I stopped one political dynasty before, and I intend to do the same in 2026. Now, I know postmodernism permits a person to have a different reality than the rest of humanity, but what in God's green earth is he talking about in I stopped a political dynasty? So he won in a special election, beating Martha Coakley in Massachusetts, but what is he referring to Kennedy? I'm sorry, Kennedy died. It wasn't even a force to be reckoned with. It wasn't even a thing. What is this political dynasty that the illustrious former ambassador to Samoa is speaking of? I'm confused.
I don't know. I didn't come up with that.
That is the dumbest thing I have ever read. And I've read some pretty amazingly stupid shit on New Hampshire Journal. I got to be honest with you.
But that one, if I were going to come up with a campaign slogan, it would be: we don't need more of the same. We don't need more legacy candidates. We don't need more political dynasties. What we need is somebody who's just going to go to DC and fight for us. That's it. Short, sweet, simple.
Or we could elect somebody who certainly voted to indefinitely detain American citizens. Yeah, we saw how well that worked out following January 6th. Hey, I got an idea. Let's give the Democrats more power. I love that idea. All right. Pack your shit. Keep in touch. All right. We're going to be taking a quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be welcoming to the program, let's see, who do we have here? Michael Pack, producer and director of The Last 600 Meters. New film that's going to be broadcast nationally on PBS on Veterans Day Eve, coming up November 10th, 2025. Michael Pack and much more of Granite State Live right after this.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Unleashing your humble alpha is the key factor to unlocking profound leadership, unshakable confidence, clarity of purpose, and the quality of life you dream of. As combat veterans and military leaders Stephen Kuhn and Lane Ballone decode how you can master your life, conquer everything that stands in your way, improve your ability to cope with stress, and run toward greatness. You can find Unleash Your Humble Alpha on Amazon.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. And I raise my hands to the sky. What a feeling, time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Yeah, I know. Wait, I don't know. Yeah, you just get down. Look at that. It's so sad. It's the, here, put that over there. Put that over there.
So I arrived about 20 minutes, 15 minutes after this fight had begun. And it was I guess I would call it a bit of a stalemate. And the reason I say a stalemate is because wounded Marine inside. Staff Sergeant Chandler organizes a rescue party. They run in the room, try and shoot everything that moves so they can pull this Marine out. As soon as they run in,
Was that from Detroit? I'm sorry, I got to be a little sarcastic with that. All right, joining us on the program, Michael Pack, the producer and director of The Last 600 Meters. This is a 90-minute documentary looking back at the Iraq War that is scheduled to be broadcast nationally on PBS, of all things, interestingly enough, on Veterans Day Eve. That'll be November 10th, 2025 at 10 p.m. His most recent film, Created Equal, Clarence Thomas, in his own words, was a 2-hour documentary opening in movie theaters in 2020, broadcast nationally again on PBS, and was called by the Washington Post a, quote, marvel of filmmaking, and the Washington Examiner saying it is magnificent and necessary. So it'll be interesting to see what the critics have to say about the last 600 meters. Michael Pack, welcome to the program. Great to have you.
Thank you for having me on.
Interesting topic. Tell me, what is the primary driving emphasis on the last 600 meters?
Well, the movie tells the story of the two biggest battles that America has fought since Vietnam. Fallujah, the first battle of Fallujah, Najaf, and the second battle of Fallujah, all in 2004. And we try to tell the story from the words and deeds of the people who fought there, from corporals and sergeants up to the sort of one-star generals that were in charge, but everyone who has boots on the ground, everyone who is there. And our goal is to tell it without really reference to politics. Should we have been in Iraq or shouldn't we have been? But really as if it were a battle story like Gettysburg or Iwo Jima. And one of our intentions really is to celebrate our veterans, the young men and women who are on the front lines fighting for us. Whatever you think about the war, they were risking their lives for what we asked them to do. And because these are unpopular war, I think these veterans have been inadequately celebrated. So I am very pleased, as you said in the introduction, that PBS is putting it on Veterans Day Eve, November 10th at 10 p.m. around the country, and afterwards it'll be streaming.
So why a documentary? I've always interesting. I mean, in my radio career, I've interviewed dozens of documentary filmmakers, and I think one of the interesting things to open up a conversation with is why this topic. What was it about this topic that compelled you to spend? I mean, this is definitely a months, if not years, long project. What was the driving force behind that, and why this topic?
Well, it was way more than months. I mean, we actually conducted these interviews in 2006 when the people who fought there were still young, and they're mostly young men, and they were still young men. And originally we were going to look, then the Iraq War was ongoing and it was in everybody's mind. And we completed it in about 2008. And although it's principally funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, PBS initially did not want to put it on the air, even though I've had 15 films that have been nationally broadcast on PBS over many decades. They felt it was too pro-military, which isn't a crime, but it actually isn't. It doesn't soft sell the horrors of war. But it took them many years to put it on, and I'm proud that they finally, the president of PBS really, overturned those earlier decisions and put it on the day before Veterans Day, and actually the Marine Corps birthday. So, but we were in researching a documentary on war. I was drawn to these battles by meeting the young, mainly Marines who fought there. I mean, they were a compelling group of people, and even back then, people talked about Fallujah, but people had no idea what had happened there. And there was a general looking down on these people. People talked about Haditha and Abu Ghraib and PTSD and, downplaying their heroism. And when I met them, I really thought that was wrong. And I wanted to change it. And I promised them in 2006 that I would get it nationally broadcast. It did take me 17 years, but at least I did it. So I'm happy it's on now. And I actually think this is a perfect time. For one thing, we are still, the world is still, our allies are engaged in just this kind of urban warfare in Gaza, in Ukraine, and elsewhere. And it's been long enough time since these battles that I think people can look back on them without being clouded by politics.
It's kind of amazing when you think about it. Going back as far as 2006, it seems like a lifetime ago. As a law enforcement trainer, I'm working with recruits and cadets in law enforcement academies that that was around the time that they were born. So you start looking at this, and it's kind of hard to imagine that it was just like yesterday, but it was so long ago. I mean, I remember exactly where I was when I watched the statue of Saddam Hussein being toppled. I remember that very distinctly, watching that on the news and watching that happening live and thinking, wow, what a monumentous occasion this is, or monumental, occasion that this is, that this is happening and we're watching this. I mean, how the world is changing and how political regimes are shifting. And here it is now, 24 years after 9/11. It's really incredible. PBS didn't want it because it was too pro-military. How can you look at a documentary about a major armed conflict and say, well, it's too pro-military? I mean, that's what the military is. So if we're going to do a documentary about the military, it's probably going to be dealing with topics that are military. I don't know. I mean, I guess I'm a rational, critical thinker here, but the irony doesn't escape me.
I agree with you. I think they were really alienated from the kinds of people that are in this film, and perhaps even from your listeners typically. Our last film, which you mentioned, Clarence Thomas, the one about Clarence Thomas, Created Equal, we had a lot of people who were maybe right of center who would say, well, I haven't watched PBS in many years. I'm not sure I still can get it on my cable channel back then. And of course they could, but I think I hope this is a sign that PBS is going to reach out more to these people, and well, they should. So I don't know. It's alienation from them, but it's not a good thing for the country to be separate from and not understand the people who enlist and serve in the military. And that's a problem in American society. It was way back then, and it still is. I mean, in some ways, the world has changed a lot in the last 17 years. In some ways, it really hasn't. I mean, you see the same things in Gaza. You see the same things in Ukraine. I mean, another film we're working on right now, we're also doing a series of short documentaries with the Wall Street Journal opinion section. And one of them is about the withdrawal from Afghanistan, which was not very long ago. But a lot of the people I've talked to that were involved in that withdrawal remind me a lot of the young men and women in the last 600 meters. So some things change and some things don't change.
All right, there we go. Well, I want to thank you for making this film. As somebody who served in Iraq, fought in Iraq, Marine Corps veteran myself, what I see going around the country right now is 80% of the country can't even qualify for military service. 77% of Congress used to be made up of military veterans, most of which were combat veterans at one point. And now approximately 13% of Congress is made up of military veterans. We went from a culture where you used to have recruiters maybe once a month in every high school in the country recruiting. You used to have lines at recruitment tables. The recruitment office used to be filled with men, young men who wanted to join, wanted to serve their country, and women still to a lesser degree wanted to serve their country. Now we have had a culture of 20 years of nonstop war since the end of World War II. Most of the wars we haven't actually won. We've been in endless conflict overseas and have accomplished literally nothing. If you served in Iraq or Afghanistan, I've been at the American Legion and the bars in this state, the VFWs and so on and so forth, and having drinks with my fellow veterans. And a lot of us really find it hard to tell the next generation of young people to join the military. And I'm saying this as a proud papa because my son just told me not too long ago he is going to enlist in the Marine Corps. And both my nephews have also started JROTC and plan on enlisting as well. And I'm from a family of 140 years on both sides of the family of military service. I find it really disturbing and really hard at the same time to sit and tell the next generation to join, when also I see how crappy our veterans get treated at home, how politicians run for office every election cycle promising they're going to solve our problems, and as soon as the election cycle is over, they go to D.C. and all of our problems are forgotten.
Well, I think
that's what contributes to it.
Absolutely. That is really true. I mean, still, I believe it's very noble to do what your son and your relatives are doing. I mean, I will say this, when I was filming these interviews back in 2006. A group, a squad of them that I focused on in the Second Battle of Fallujah came to my house for dinner, And we showed them some of the footage that I was going to interview them about the next day that one of them had shot, Jan Bender, combat cameraman. And my oldest son, who was then, I think, like a freshman in high school, met these people and watched the footage, and he wanted to enlist that day. He wanted to go out and enlist in the Marine Corps the next day. But luckily for me, these were all corporals and sergeants. They told him maybe he should finish college first. So that was good. And he didn't enlist, but he is actually a reservist DC police officer. So he's still risking his life for people. So look, I think that's right. And I think Pete Hegseth is trying to reverse that. And I think that's important to do. The military is a very important institution, and it needs to be connected to the American people. I mean, it's the thing the government does that is absolutely most essential. I mean, it does lots of nice things, but the thing it's pledged to do is to defend America from foreign enemies, and we need it. And we are threatened. I mean, particularly now by China, a near peer threatening us. But we are going to be involved in things like Iraq and Afghanistan again, I'm sorry to say. I hope we do it with better wisdom next time, but you can't really avoid it. And we rely on these young men and women idealistically volunteering. I think you're right that the fact these wars ended so badly is a real discouragement. There is no way to sugarcoat that, except that you see in our film, whatever the goals, these are people who are idealistic, believe in the country, and are putting their life on the line. I think you'll see in the tiny little clip that you showed from that scene, Hell House, at the end of the Second Battle of Fallujah, those people were going in there to rescue Marines that were trapped in a house in Fallujah, that were trapped by insurgent fire from multiple directions. The Marines went in, they had to take their Kevlar off to get into that house, and they crossed the kill zone 4 times to pull other Marines to safety. I mean, you can't not be inspired by the courage and heroism of these people when you watch this film. And I think that would be true for your relatives as well. I hope they watch it.
I think one of the things that I'm glad to see this administration actually, and Pete Hegseth, restoring the warrior spirit within the military, because one of the things that I don't think many people understand is vast majority of people who join the military do not do it because there's a great commercial about a Marine officer climbing a mountain, slaying a dragon, and transforming from a knight into his officer uniform with his Mameluke sword. That's not it. The vast majority of people who join are recruited by other service members and are told stories by other service members that make them want to join. Your teachers, your cops, your firefighters, the people in your community. And when you demoralize the military, when you destroy the morale, those people no longer tell those stories. Their stories become dark. When we stop having our needs met by the government that we fought to protect, or the culture turns into a service member hating culture, and I experienced it firsthand living out in California, that I hope we get to a point where people don't want to serve anymore. And I'm glad to see that that's turning around and the recruitment numbers are back up and everything. And I hope your movie has the impact. I hope your documentary has the impact that it's desired to have.
I hope so too. I mean, we can't really rely only on ex-Marines to tell the story orally. We filmmakers, we in the media have to broadcast it more broadly. And I think it is a shame that the military becomes just the province of a small group, a small part of America that has family and friends in the military, and not a broad swath of America. I mean, that is really a problem, and it is reflected in the makeup of Congress, as you mentioned earlier. So I really do hope that changes. I think that the movie will have that effect. As I say, it had the effect on my teenage son at the time. But I think, I'm sure the programs like yours have that effect too. And it would be good. I mean, it is important to have good political leadership of the military. I mean, that's the problem in these wars. As I say, we're working on this one on the withdrawal from Afghanistan. And I really think that the people, the young Marines at Abbey Gate, another mainly Marine thing, who were having to make life and death decisions and witness horrible things that no one should see, people want to turn away from that. But I think those people should be getting a separate kind of medal for putting up with an unbelievably difficult situation. And instead, they get home and they're kind of ignored. I mean, people don't want to talk about this stuff. And it was the same with the veterans in Iraq in my film. You know, these people, I mean, I celebrate, of course, it's great when, you know, to celebrate anybody who serves. But those people that really were at the tip of the spear, that put their own lives, that had to watch the horrible things you see in the last 600 meters and even more horrible things in the Afghanistan film, you know, they really deserve society's honoring them and honoring them greatly. And not just on Veterans Day, but Veterans Day is a good day to do it.
Was there anything in making this film that you walked away with surprised to have learned or been exposed to?
Well, the thing that surprised me most and that led to the film in a way was how originally, you may or may not remember this, it was all Iraq was going to be and Afghanistan were going to be high-tech wars. I mean, in the beginning in Iraq, they had that, you know, the quick strike with special forces going in with close air support, you know, quickly working with the Northern Alliance, quickly taking down the Taliban. It was going to be a high-tech battle. But then these urban battles, this sort of urban warfare, this counterinsurgency, really comes down to individual soldiers. Seth Moulton, who actually is in the film and is in fact a Democratic congressman from Massachusetts, he talks about in his group, they were fighting this battle of Najaf against Shiite insurgents in the south. And they're fighting in this very weird underground cemetery, you know, ancient cemetery with catacombs. And one guy in his platoon encounters an insurgent, and they're fighting each other with their bayonets. It's like hand-to-hand combat with knives. You know, it's like back hundreds of years. And, you know, it's the strongest one wins, and it's a tough fight, and it's not a pretty fight. So, I mean, those kind of.
But it's an effective means of warfare. That's, you know, that's the bottom line. That insurgency, and I don't know. I wasn't there, Julian. You were. I mean, is this something that really people had expected, or was this a level of warfare that, I mean, even training and military education from the Western perspective hadn't prepared troops to really weather?
Well, so there's a difference in what military leadership expects on a battlefield and how we actually train. We're always training for the next war. We're not just training for what's immediately in front of us and whatever we're getting sent to. We're constantly training for whatever might happen. So we train in hand-to-hand combat. We train all that. We have MCMAP and things like that. However, there was a leadership expectation that Iraq specifically was going to be a high-tech war. We were going to walk over Saddam's armies. This was going to be done. To a large degree, that happened. The insurgency happened afterwards, or that followed it, was due to bad methodology in the leadership conducting the war. That's what led to the low-tech nature of the war. Now, when it came to the actual fighting in bunkers and stuff, you're going to have those scenarios that happen at any given point in time in any war. Mm-hmm. Because just because you go to war with somebody and you shoot a couple of their buddies doesn't mean they're going to lay down their rifles and just give up. Only in the West do we assume that there's going to be this polite lining up on a battlefield where we're all shooting at each other, like the Civil War or the Revolutionary War, where everywhere else in the world they use child soldiers, they use women, they use tactics that aren't okay in the Geneva Convention. Only here do we expect that everything's going to go according to plan. Now, we don't train that way. We know we're going to, if you walk into a room and there's a guy sitting right inside the door with a knife, he's going to knife you if he can. Yeah, you're going to shoot this guy, and this guy, but that guy's going to knife you and whoever comes in the door behind you.
Well, I guess one of the reasons I asked that question is because in having a conversation with a Marine Corps colonel, and he was involved heavily in intelligence, and so they had predictive algorithms that would help them, or at least they believed would help them to forecast what the outcome would be. And what he said was, and this is one of the reasons why if there were ever a civil war here in the United States, that the predictive algorithms really give a false prediction of what would happen, because what you're not taking into account are those citizen soldiers who in the Middle East would pick up an AK-47 and go out and become part of an insurgency. What you're not taking into consideration here are the people who aren't on social media, who aren't out at rallies, but who have a basement full of weapons and ammunition, and if God forbid this thing kicks off, they're going to be there on the front lines. And predictive algorithms are not factoring in all of those domestic insurgents or those insurgents on foreign soils.
That's exactly the issue. It's the tendency for these predictive algorithms to look at individuals as ones and zeros to be plugged into an equation, rather than walking, talking variables, creating infinite number of variables.
So, Michael, in kind of in keeping with with that little sidebar there, did you hear anything from either from the military strategists that you spoke with, the foot soldiers that were over there, that addressed an element of surprise at how much more difficult this was to fight than what they had expected based upon information that they were being given?
Well, I think that in this case, in these battles, it wasn't so much the intelligence; it was what was going on politically that the military kind of suddenly had to deal with. The first Battle of Fallujah, just to remind you, it began with one of those images like the one you mentioned earlier. Just to remind you, it began because 4 Blackwater contractors were killed, burned, dragged through the streets of Fallujah, then hung from a bridge. And then politicians, not the military, decided we had to expel all insurgents from that city. So they went to take over Fallujah. But then midway through, it was determined that they needed to make a deal with those very insurgents. And the Marines were pulled out, and Fallujah was handed over essentially to the insurgents. And it became a safe place for them where they could have an arms depot, and they could beheadings and tortures happen there, up to the point where then 6 months later, the politicians and the decision makers decided they had to finally clear the city, and that was the second Battle of Fallujah, from which that clip you showed at the head was from, and they had to clear it house by house. But again, because of the perceived harm to civilians in the first Battle of Fallujah, because as you both have said, insurgents used civilians to hide behind. This time they announced they were going in and told all the civilians to leave, but so did the leadership of the insurgency, and they all went to Ramadi, leaving behind a core group of people whose only mission was to kill as many Marines as they could before they died. So yeah, those changes, those political shifts created massive problems that the military had to deal with, and not only the military, but sort of way at the bottom, at the tip of the spear, corporals, sergeants, tankers, special forces people who are in our film. So yeah, there was a lot of that unanticipated, things that algorithms can't pick up. And algorithms are great. I'm of course, the technology is great, AI is great, but war involves a lot of other kinds of things too. And if you don't understand it from having been at the ground, you won't understand it. And the politics of it end up, in this kind of warfare especially, determining a lot of the way the battle goes and presenting lots of problems for those asked to fight it.
There's something that you said, hiding behind civilians. I want to correct something. Yes, there are insurgents who hide behind civilians, but there are also civilians who help insurgents. And unfortunately, unlike any other standing war where you have people wearing a uniform and you know exactly who is the combatant and who isn't, they're all walking around in these man dresses with guns below them, or they're wearing burqas and they have suicide vests below them. You don't know which civilians are there as victims being used as human shields, which ones are willingly being used as human shields, which ones are combatants themselves who are pretending to be human shields. And unlike in a normal war where you shoot the guy, everybody else lays down after, he's got his gun down, you shoot the man, the wife picks up the gun, or the son picks up the gun, you shoot the woman, the kid picks up the gun. There is no predicting what you're dealing with in this scenario, and that's where the predictive models didn't recognize what we were going to be walking into. Not to mention the 3 block war, where we're active war on one side, humanitarian aid here, hearts and minds over here. The problem is that for every guy you shoot and every civilian that dies, you're also creating another insurgent. The longer that we're there, the more we displace the population, the more we cause problems for these people, the more we create more insurgents.
All right, we're getting the music here, so we are just about out of time. Michael Pack, The Last 600 Meters is the film that'll be airing on PBS on Veterans Day Eve, November 10th, 2025 at 10 p.m. Is there going to be a simulcast on PBS website if people don't have...
Yes, it'll be on PBS website, PBS app, and shortly thereafter, it'll be on the PBS Amazon channel and other streaming services.
Perfect. Okay, Michael Pack, producer and director of The Last 600 Meters and president of Manifold Productions. And you can check out that website at manifoldproductions.com. That's manifoldproductions.com. I, for one, am looking forward to checking this out. Michael, thank you so much for joining us tonight. We certainly appreciate your time and look forward to checking out some of your future films as well, too.
Thank you very much. Great to be with you guys.
Thank you. All right, we're going to take a very, very quick commercial break. When we come back, we're going to be checking in with Deputy Edgar Vasquez Silva, who is a sheriff's deputy who lost his position because at 23 years old, he was a DACA kid. He came to the country at the age of 3. Went on to become a law enforcement officer and was stripped of that title due to DACA status. So we're going to have that conversation with Deputy Silva and much, much more when Granite State Live continues. Please stick around. Good stuff.
Myron Norwood gets shot in the head, killed instantly.
Then First Sergeant Brad Castle realizes that there are men in extremis hurt. He can hear the screams. He enters the house. He grabs Marines nearby, takes them in.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. And I raise my hands to the sky. What a feeling, time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
How do you know when you've made the right decision? It's the feeling you get in your gut. The one that tells you what's right or wrong. It's the one that says, sure, I can have a drink. Or the feeling that says, okay, I've been drinking. Now what? It's the voice inside you that says, I'm buzzed. Better leave the car when it's time to go. Plan ahead. Catch a sober ride. Buzz driving is drunk driving.
I was born in Reynosa, Tamaulipas, Mexico. I came to the U.S. when I was 3 years old. I didn't have a choice. My mother brought me here for a better life, a better future. I'm also a DACA recipient in the state of Mississippi, and I'm also a deputy sheriff with Stone County Sheriff's Office. Work as a transporter. Coming to America, I was able to go to school. It was very challenging, learning how to speak and write English. And over time, I was able to master it and learned how to stand up for the Pledge of Allegiance. Growing up in school, being a citizen was not something that even popped up in my mind. When I got to high school, I realized then that.
All right, welcome back to a Tuesday night edition of, well, every show is a Tuesday night edition of Granite State Live because that is the night that we broadcast, kids. That's why you set aside your Tuesday evening to spend it right here with us on this Tuesday, the 21st day of October 2025. All right, well, I guess unless you've been living under a rock for the past year, immigration issues have become a pretty hot button topic. As I had mentioned at the opening of the show, a judge in Illinois now granting authorization, this will be interesting to see how this plays out, for the arrest of ICE officials who detain illegal immigrants following court proceedings without warrants. Now, again, this is authorizing the taking into custody of federal law enforcement officers who are enforcing federal law. It'll be interesting to see what happens when somebody tries to take an ICE agent into custody, especially with the there is no right to resist even an unlawful arrest. But I have to be honest with you, if I were a federal agent and I had some Chicago police officer telling me that I had to put my hands behind his back, I think I would respectfully decline. I think it'd be interesting to get our next guest's perspective on this. But before we do that, I want to hear his story because I think this is a pretty interesting story. So it brings me great pleasure to bring and welcome to the program Deputy Edgar Vasquez Silva, Sheriff's Deputy from the great state of Mississippi. Deputy Silva, welcome to the program. Great to have you, sir.
Hey, thank you for having me.
So I'm not going to take anything away from you here, sir. Please tell us your story, start to finish. Love to hear it.
Okay, so I'm a DACA recipient, and I'm also deputy sheriff here in the state, beautiful state of Mississippi. I'm employed with Stone County Sheriff's Office in Wiggins, Mississippi. I came to the U.S. when I was 3. My mother brought me here for a better life, a better future. I didn't have a choice. It was one of those things where she just brought me here for a better life and a better future. I went to school and learned the language, learned the culture, and then after that, I was once I graduated high school. That's when I realized that being a citizen here, to get a job, was going to be a big factor, in which I didn't even realize you had to be a citizen, because those things don't pop up when you're a kid, So as time went by, I was able to work, but I had to work like hard labor, and work with other people that didn't have any kind of status or any kind of paperwork to work in any kind of jobs. So later on, I went to college, and that was hard because you had to pay out of state tuition because, as an undocumented immigrant, you can't get grants, you can't get, you can't just get those kind of loans in order for you to go to college. So, and my beautiful mother, God rest her soul, she wanted to sell her home for me to go to college. And I was like, Mom, me being here for college for about a year, it's really, really tough. It's just not for me anymore. We'll figure something out. Luckily, Obama came along and he decided to bring the DACA program. At first, it was the DREAM Act, and sadly, it didn't pass. We were really, really hoping that it would, but it didn't. So later on, DACA became established. So I got on to I signed up for DACA, and I could prove all the years that I've been here, and that really, really helped me out a lot. So once I got DACA, I was able to work, get jobs, be able to pay taxes, and I worked in management. I ended up working security. But something in my heart always told me, you know what, I want to do something, like in the service. I want to give back to the country that has given me opportunities, even though I never got deported. And I would just kept telling myself, you know what, I really want to join the service, whether it's military or whether it's law enforcement. But the military wouldn't accept me because at that time you had to be a citizen. And I just don't see how some people can say you can join the military, they'll take anybody. Well, I tried and it didn't work. So later on, when I hit 30 or 31, that's whenever I decided to say, you know what, law enforcement it is. So I went to a part-time police academy, and I was able to graduate there. It was 40 applicants. I believe 23 were accepted, and only 6 of us graduated. So I was the first DACA recipient to ever graduate at a part-time police academy. When I graduated, Columbia Police Department hired me, and when they did, I was able to work on the road, and be able to help people, and get to know them and learn the community. And then as time went by, I was honored to work at I was honored to go to the full-time police academy. And when that happened, 4 weeks in, because at Mississippi it's 12 weeks to graduate. So I was 4 weeks in, and that's whenever they found out I was a DACA recipient, which I never had an issue in the part-time, but when I went to the full-time, it was an issue, and I was dismissed. They told me I had to have at least 60 to 90 days to have some type of green card or some type of citizenship, and there's just no way you can get that within 90 days or 60 days. Immigration right now is tough, and it's always been a controversial subject, and it's really, really hard to be an American here. And those that are American citizens here, they should be really, really proud, because there's people like me that wish we could have that status so I can fulfill my career. The problem that I'm having is that when Columbia hired me, you had 10 days to submit your paperwork. Well, I didn't know how that worked. That's something that our chief had to send it to standards and training. So our chief never turned it in. And then I was, in my mind, I thought I was already certified, and I wasn't. So that's the problem that we're having here. And so the sheriff and I decided to go to minimum standards and talk to them and say, hey, look, I'm legal in a way. I've got driver license. I got a social security card. I have my DACA status that I had to renew every 2 years, and making sure that I am, my background is perfect. What all do y'all need? So, and that's later on, my story started making a little bit of news. And then WDAM reached out to me and wanted to do an interview, and they interviewed me and interviewed the sheriff, and the sheriff is, backing me up. And then I actually reached out to Fox News, and they reached out back, and they're like, you know what, you're a great candidate with the DACA and speaking for DACA, and how you want to meet the president. And we did an interview with Fox News, and, and the rest is history, and here I am sharing my story, and I'm hoping to meet the president and see if he could do a miracle for me so I can pursue my career in law enforcement, so I could give back to the country that has given me the opportunity, because this country is the greatest country in the world. I mean, we wouldn't have any immigrants coming to this country that it love America. And I'm speaking for DACA recipients, because there's a lot of DACA recipients that are conservative that don't want to speak. And I'm actually one of them that actually is speaking to tell other people, like, hey, we love this country just as much as Trump loves this country. So, we're Americans, but not on paper, but we sure prove we are Americans every day.
So you had said that you believe that you were already certified, but come to find out that you weren't. Is that as a result of your part-time academy, or is that a result of the time that you spent in the full-time academy?
It was actually when I was in the full-time police academy. It's when I found out that later I was not certified the whole time that I was with Columbia Police Department.
Okay, so were you certified after you went through the part-time academy?
No, what it is when you go to the part-time police academy, they send your paperwork to the I think they send it to the state, but for some reason, all my director at the time, he put everything on there, and everything fell in. There was no issues, there was no problems, and then in the whole time that I was in the police academy as a part-time, there was never an issue, and I graduated there. But then when I went to the full time, that's whenever they said, okay, there's a problem there.
Mm-hmm. So now the issue right now is what? Because I mean, with DACA, you have work permits, you have protections. There are mechanisms in place that would help you to number one, not be deported. Number two, to be able to work, so on and so forth. So what is the issue? Is it with your state's post certification? Is it with the federal government?
Yes.
So it's with the post certification.
It's for the post, and then the fact that I have tried to reach out to to senators here in the state of Mississippi, and I couldn't get hardly nobody to help me. And the only thing they ever said was it's more like a federal. And I'm like telling myself, okay, if it's a federal, how come there's other states? Yes, they're Democratic states, but how come other states have allowed DACA to become police officers? New Mexico just passed a bill for DACA to become police officers, and not to mention the ATF have made new guidelines. So it's like they keep saying it's a state thing, but then they're turning around and saying it's a federal thing. And I have reached out to the governor, and I can't get nowhere with the governor. I tried to call him. Well, actually reach out to his office and send emails, and I could never get anything from the governor. I wish he could reach back to me, and maybe we could work this out. But for right now, I just don't have any luck with my certification, because right now it's pending until I either get a green card or I become a citizen.
So what is it going to take for you now to get the green card?
Okay, so this is pretty tough, because a lot of people think, hey, if you just marry somebody, you can become a citizen, and that's not true. The problem is, since I came here illegally as a child, I have to leave the country through an advance parole that is in place. And so I applied for it, and I sent it out in February. I'm still waiting for my approval, but I have to leave the country, come back in, and then apply for my green card. And if I do it by myself, it's going to take maybe 10, 15 years for me to get a green card. But if I marry a U.S. citizen after coming back to the U.S. and submit my paperwork, my marriage license, it can take less than a year for me to have a green card in the U.S.
So is that, I mean, this is where I look at something and I say, you came to this country when you were 3 years old. There was no intent. I mean, as somebody who studied in the academy, clearly you know what mens rea is. At 3 years of age, you do not possess the mens rea to make a decision to come into the country. It seems to me that there should be, and I don't know the particular individuals of your case, but it seems to me that there should be a mechanism in place to speed your process up. And I, when people would say, well, that kind of contradicts some of the things that you've said in the past, Keith. No, I've always said that I think it should be on individual merits. I think if you are taking advantage of the system, if you're here with welfare and with free housing and with free education and the Obama phone and everything else, and you're simply taking advantage of the country, then I don't think that we should be supporting people. But I think on an individual basis, when you're looking at people, you're looking at the individual merits of the case. If you have somebody who has, as you clearly have, you've worked your butt off, you've kept your nose clean, you're trying to pursue the American dream, and you didn't come to this country under false pretenses or illegally, because as a child you can't do that, then there should be a mechanism to be able to say, okay, based upon the merits of this case, based upon your individual achievements, based upon what you have done with your life for the duration of your life, there is something that should be done here for this. I would be the first person to say that is only, it's not fair, it's just.
Yes, sir. And and my biggest frustration is, like, if I had $1 for every person that said, hey, you know what, just marry a citizen. And, and I'm like, I've been here my whole life. I was raised by a bunch of buddies of mine that are rednecks. I went to their Baptist churches, and I'm not Catholic, to be honest. I'm just a good old Mexican country boy, and I love Jesus and I love God. But in the Bible, it never mentions about marrying somebody because you need something from them. If I marry my fiance is because I love her. It's not because I need something from her. And, you know, we've been together for 4 years, but it's one thing that goes in the back of my mind. And I'm just like, you know, I don't want her to feel like this is why we married each other. You know, if I marry her because I love her, and if you marry somebody, it's because, you know, you want to build something together, you know, build an empire together, and it's because you love them, not because you need something from her or she needs something from me, you know. And when I have to go to immigration and explain to them, you know, for an interview, because, you know, there can be something where they want to do an interview and see who you are, you know, and it's one of those things that I hope and pray they don't ask me, well, did you marry her because you needed papers, you know? And I'm like, I can't sit there and lie and be like, well, no, you know, I didn't marry her for papers, you know, but, you know, it's just one of those things that is really, really frustrating, you know, and I just want people to know that, you know, that's where I stand with the marriage and speeding up the process. I wish that it could be easier for people like me that have put the dues, contribute to the U.S., paying their taxes, and don't have any kind of criminal record, and all they're doing is fighting for their country like I am. Like I put my life on the line every other day as a transport deputy, you know, without carrying a gun, because I can't carry a gun here in the state of Mississippi because of the law that says you have to have a green card or you have to be a citizen in order to carry in the state of Mississippi as a law enforcement officer.
Yeah. So, So you're wearing the uniform now. Are you currently employed by the Stone County Sheriff's Office? Okay. And what capacity are you in? A civilian, non-sworn position?
I'm actually okay. So I'm a transport deputy, and I have to be with someone that actually carries a firearm.
Okay.
So like I work for the department of the sheriff's department. And we work for taking care of, you know, dealing with inmates, taking them to the justice court or taking them to circuit court. And then it depends, too, sometimes where if we have somebody that don't speak Spanish, if it's outside of Stone County, I can actually translate. But if it's inside of Stone County, I can't translate because it's a conflict of interest. So that's what I do right now as a transport deputy.
Okay.
And, you know, and like the sheriff said in the past, you know, you earned your stripes to be a deputy. So we're not going to take that away from you. It's not like you never went to the police academy and didn't do anything, you know. So, you know, and I just want people to know that I actually I worked to be where I was at. You know, I went to the police academy and I was about to finish the full-time police academy, but, you know, because of the DACA status, you know, I got dismissed, but thank God I still have a job in law enforcement because it's the biggest. It's my passion, and I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world.
I can tell you as somebody who's been in law enforcement since 1995, I give a lot of credit to the detentions guys because I don't have any problem going out and locking them up, but I would not want to have to babysit them. And more to the point, I would not want to be doing prisoner transports for DOC without a firearm. So if I had a hat on, I would tip it to you. A couple of things that I'm just thinking of here, and I'm first of all. How plugged in or juiced in is your sheriff with your capital city there? Because it seems like as the chief law enforcement officer for Stone County, that man could be rattling some cages and saying, hey, you know what? I'm going to make some noise down here, and I'm going to make some noise until somebody in that Capitol building listens. I mean, how far has he taken this up the food chain?
To be honest with you, we have tried and tried and tried to the point that I said, you know what, I'll put myself out there and I'll fight for my story, you know, and, you know, the sheriff can only do so much, you know, and I don't want to put that too much pressure on him because, you know, he has other deputies to worry about because, you know, we had 2 deputies getting shot in the past year, you know, this year, you know, and so, you know, I try not to get too much involved, but he does help me a lot with it. And gives me guidance, you know. And the last time we ever heard from a congressman was about 6-7 months ago, and you know, and apparently he watched my video and stuff from Fox News, and he was going to get back with us. And here we are, about 5-6 months later, we haven't heard anything. So, you know, like I said, I gave up at the Capitol in Mississippi. And now I'm trying to take my story further and maybe take it to the White House. And hopefully I can meet the president and see if he can bless me with the biggest miracle of my life, just like he did for DJ, that precious child at the, I think it was the United Nations, or no, not United Nations, the State of the Union, or wherever Trump went to speak with, with Congress. I wish I pray that he can do something similar for that, for that to me.
Have you are you familiar at all with the Federation for American Immigration Reform?
No, sir.
Okay, so and I'm going to have my producer get some information to you off air here. But the Federation for American Immigration Reform, they're at FAIR, FAIRUS.org. I would imagine that there's some resources over there, being a one of the largest organizations dealing specifically with American immigration reform as a lobbying organization. They are plugged in with some of the top. And also including, I mean, they've done, they actually did a meeting in the Rose Garden with Vice President Pence, and going back, of course, to Trump's first administration, where there were about 350 sheriffs, elected sheriffs from across the country, who were attending immigration reform meeting with Vice President Pence in the Rose Garden. They are very, very plugged in, and I think that this would be a very interesting story for them to take a look at and see if there's, especially with the number of people, like I said, that they are plugged into just a few blocks away on Capitol Hill, that may actually help you to gain some traction there. Because this I think is one of those stories, and that's one of these instances where. Listen, it's not an issue of being fair. I always quote my fifth grade teacher when she used to say, fair is something you pay to get on a bus. This is life. But this, I think, is really an issue of what's right and what's just. And the fact that, as I said, you have done what you've done with your life. You've paid your dues. You have certainly put your best foot forward and established that you're here, excuse me, to maximize the American dream and to make a difference for both yourself and more importantly, your community. I think this is something that probably people should be looking at and saying, okay, here's a perfect example, really, of where the human side of this comes out. And I'm not talking about in the bleeding heart progressive liberal way, but in a way that's actually just, and I think it makes sense. And I think if we put your story out in front of 100 people, I would suspect that 99 out of 100 people, even the most conservative amongst and most pro immigration reform, are going to look at your story and say, well, first of all, no choice of his, 3 years old, he's made the best of it. Look at where he is right now. He's outperforming a significant portion of the society that's out there on Saturday afternoon doing anti-ICE immigration protests and no Kings rallies. We should probably take a look at this and see what we can do here to speed this process up. This should not be something that's moving at the speed of government.
Yes, sir. And I'm a conservative as a DACA, and I kind of shock people when I say that, because people in my culture, almost half of them are Democratic, and then you got half of them that are for Trump and conservative, and we saw on our election how many Latinos and Hispanics actually voted for Trump, this year, and it was a big number. It's a big jump. And I tell people that, I got, I don't mean to get all political, but I gave up on Democrats a long, long time ago when I actually understood, where their mentality is and how they believe things, and they have 13 years to fix this problem, for people like me. But instead, they just, they go out there, they make all these promises, and they don't deliver. And then when Joe Biden was in office, the first thing he does is open the border. And I'm just like, come on, man, can you not fix the legal immigration? Like people like me or immigrants that have been here their whole entire lives, that never committed a crime, but just came here illegally like I did. And they have tried everything they could to get some type of immigration status, some type of green card, some type of something. And it's like nothing. They preferred the illegals and give them all the benefits that you and I and all our homeless and our veterans did not get, being here. For those 4 years, they got all kinds of benefits and all kinds of money and everything that, like I said, that you, our veterans and our homeless and our citizens did not even get, and I just got tired of it. I'm tired, and I get, me speaking up and speaking for not just myself, or for DACA community and other immigrants that don't want to speak because they're terrified that they might get called a traitor or a coconut. My family do support me, and I do have some that don't support it because I support Trump. I support Trump in different ways, but there's some things that I don't agree with because I feel like they need more work, on immigration. I feel like Tom Homan, Kristi Noem, and I think Stephen Miller, I feel like they need a little bit more work and actually go after the ones that are actually been here that have committed crimes after crimes after crimes, and they never done anything to contribute to this country but just get in trouble. I feel like those should be gone. And the ones that have been here their whole lives that are contributing to the United States, I feel like there should be some type of immigration reform, but don't make it so hard for us, because at the end of the day, immigrants like me and DACA recipients like me, we want to be Americans because we're just as American as Trump is. And I want him to know that we love this country, and Democrats are not helping us. And we're asking him to help us out because he tried to help us out the first term. If you remember the first term, he offered pathway to citizenship for immigrants and DACA recipients in exchange for the border wall, and the Democrats rejected that. Nancy Pelosi blocked it, and I'm like,
look at where we are right now, Edgar. We're 21 days into a shutdown, 11 attempts, 11 votes, and Democrats dig their heels in because I got to be honest with you, they don't give a rat's ass about people like you. They give all of their attention and all of their crocodile tears to people that are coming across the border illegally and that are monetizing the drug cartels in this country. But people like you, and by the way, because you're a law enforcement officer, oh, you know what? You're Satan. You can go to hell because they don't care about you. And they don't. And I'm glad to hear that, you kind of seen where the Democrat Party has left you. Listen, people who do it right, there's a reason why people like you get pissed off, because you're doing it right, and all of your efforts, all of your energy, all of your time, all of your sacrifice is literally being flushed down the toilet by people who are coddling people who aren't doing it the right way, who are cutting corners, taking shortcuts. And I think we can all agree that that is wrong. I'm going to reach out to you off air here because I want to plug in to touch with some people here that I don't know if they're going to be able to make a direct difference, but they may be able to make enough noise to get some attention on your story. And we're definitely going to continue following your story as well too. I think it's compelling, and I think this is an issue of what is just and what is right. So I want to thank you very much for your time, and keep the faith, because you know what? Somebody is going to hear your story and they're going to be in a position to influence some change here. Deputy Edgar Vasquez Silva from the Stone County, Mississippi Sheriff's Office, I want to thank you so much for being a part of the program tonight. Keep the faith, and we'll be in touch.
Yes, sir. Hey, thank you for having me. And I want to say one message for all of the American citizens. Please be proud of this country. Pray for our nation. Pray for this country. There's a lot of people out there that wish we could have that status. And, just know that people like me, we love this country just as much as you do. So always be proud to be an American, because there's a lot of people like me that wish we could have that status. And God bless you all. And pray for our country, pray for our president, and let's move forward.
All right. Thank you. I couldn't say it better myself. Thank you so much. And we're going to leave it on that note. Wayne Morrow, Chief Executive Officer of John Birch Society, coming up when Granite State Live continues. Let's think about his words. We'll be right back after this.
New Hampshire Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte has been making a lot of noise about how she's funding education. The Republican budget she just signed provides more money for education than ever before. She even bragged the other day that New Hampshire is top 10 in the country when it comes to funding our children's education, as if giving money to school systems has anything to do with learning. If you look at the math, and if you got schooled in New Hampshire, the odds are good it's not your best subject. It's the exact opposite. The more money we throw at schools, the less kids learn. We're committed to wasting money on an experiment that failed, unless wasting money to drive parents to homeschool their kids was the goal. We prefer to pick on Democrats, lower hanging fruit and all that, but our rhetorical woodshed doesn't discriminate. If that sounds refreshing, you need to check us out. This is Steve McDonald for Granite Rock, and we'll keep shining the light on them for you.
Unleashing your humble alpha is the key factor to unlocking profound leadership, unshakable confidence, clarity of purpose, and the quality of life you dream of. As combat veterans and military leaders Stephen Kuhn and Lane Balone decode how you can master your life, conquer everything that stands in your way, improve your ability to cope with stress, and run toward greatness. You can find Unleash Your Humble Alpha on Amazon.
This could be the moment we've been waiting for, the chance to feel alive. And I raise my hands to the sky. What a feeling, time to feel it. This is where it all begins. This is where it all begins.
Yeah, I know. Wait, I don't know. Yeah, you just stand out. Look at that. It's so sad. It's good. It's here, put that over there.
Can you pull that camera up one more time, please? There we go. Excluding the cute and fuzzy bunny that's hopping around there. There were some small little rodents running around. I didn't know if that was DNC headquarters or not. Where there are rats, there are Democrats. Well, look at that. Hey, that wasn't even intended, but it was perfect. Democrats, rats. Somebody would say, oh, Keith, you're doing exactly what you accuse the opposition of doing. You're dehumanizing. Never. I would never do that. All right, speaking of rats, the United Nations and Klaus Schwab and globalization and international power and just reminds me of the Tears for Fears song, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Wayne Morrow, Chief Executive Officer of the John Birch Society. It is great to have you back on the program, my friend. How are things?
How are you? How's it going, my good old friends in good old New Hampshire? Live free or die, not and die, right?
No. Live free or die. We want to live the best life possible.
Absolutely.
And then we want to go home to the kingdom of heaven. That would be a great end.
Good old New Hampshire. Good deal. Snowing yet, by the way?
I'm sorry?
It's not snowing yet, right? Next week?
1 inch of snow at the top of Mount Washington, actually.
I'm not surprised.
So it's it's already oh God, no. Yeah, it's too early. It's too early. We were just in the middle of tick season, what feels like a couple of days ago, and now suddenly we're about to welcome in the cold November rain. I don't know. It's pretty crazy. So what's going on in your neck of the swamp there?
Well, real busy. I mean, big day is October the 24th is the 80th anniversary of the Day of Shame that we actually become part of the United Nations. We've been trying to talk about ticks. we've tried to get out of that thing since back there when Mr. Welch said in 1963, get us out.
Mm-hmm.
And as time goes through, what a disaster that place has been for everybody. I've had a conversation since I saw you last three times about, what good things have come out of the UN. And I was still waiting to hear what some good things came out. Still waiting. Yeah, we did feed a few children and really needed some food. But other than that, I'll tell you, it's been an absolute nightmare for everybody. Yeah, absolutely. But we've been busy trying to get people activated for, as we talked last time about the vote coming up in November next year. And I think I left with you last time, act like you lost, because that's still, the world of complacency still exists. And I have to wake up good fellow Americans that this is an important election. The left is real busy. I don't know about New Hampshire. Are they banging their, screaming and yelling the woke crowd? But I know they certainly do that down south.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the usual. It's the usual up here right now, to be honest. I mean, it's the same change nothing establishment Republicans that are, again, they're too busy spiking the football in the end zone to realize that, especially in New Hampshire here, we run in 2-year election cycles, Wayne. So, it appears as though we are being set up for the same thing that happened in 2018. 2016, anything with a pulse and an R next to its name was going to be carried across the finish line by President Trump. And then the 2 years that the Republican Party spent spiking the football in the end zone, the Democrats reformulated, and 2018 we lost everything with the exception of the corner office because, hey, you know what? Chris Sununu, that was a Freudian slip. Chris Sununu, His Royal Highness Christopher T. Sununu, is Democrat light. He was a safe bet for a lot of mainstream Democrats. They looked at him and said, well, he certainly was better than the Democrat candidate, but the executive council, which serves in lieu of a lieutenant governor, the House and the Senate, it all went blue. Whether or not that's going to happen again, it seems to be that there's a little bit of disarray right now with the Democrat Party here in the Granite State. They still haven't quite figured out what's happening. And to be honest with you, 21 days into a government shutdown, I think they're going to have a very, very hard time explaining that to at least the voters who may vote Democrat but still have an iota of critical thinking skills. So I don't know. It remains to be seen. But I don't have high hopes for the Republican Party here in New Hampshire because the majority of them couldn't find their way out of a phone booth with a detailed map. Of course.
So no key person against ex-mayor, senator, or whatever she is, Jean Shaheen. I thought for sure that'd be somebody good coming replacing her.
Well, John E. Sununu is supposed to be announcing it's imminent. So it was expected today. I haven't seen any news flashes yet that he's announced. But he is, at least as an undeclared candidate, he is in hypothetical lineups that he would take that office. So.
Okay. All right. I was kind of curious. That's always been a surprise. Because I lived in New Hampshire almost 30 years, and I watched her come from a, town politician up through the ways when Steve Merrill decided not to run for governor. So I think she jumped over a couple of folding chairs to line up. Mm-hmm. And so that's been a long time ago, but that's a surprise. But anyway, good question. So that's what I've been doing. I've been busy trying to get people activated again out of complacency, to get busy. As we talk about our Congressman scorecard on our website, very important to have our Congressman Senate scorecard, how people vote, even state legislators. It's really important to get involved in the process before it's way too late. And so, like I said, act like you lost. But I think you want to talk about the United Nations. United Nations, we spend $13 billion a year. We're about 25% of their overall budget. And I think I showed with you last time, all these, here's all these little places where all the UN has offices, and they're all over the map. Most people have no idea that the World Bank's in Washington, D.C., the International Monetary Fund is of course, in Washington, D.C. Then you have New York City has a raft of them. And then you have them all over. The IMO, International Maritime, is in London, and on it goes all over the world. France, UNESCO, The Hague. And it's amazing I think I sent you guys a copy of this magazine when we did this map. And I show this even the guys in Australia a couple of weeks ago. They were just gobsmacked saying, man, I didn't realize there's so many offices. What are these people doing in these offices? They're on the menu. They're dicing up the world for world government. But there's two pieces of legislation. It's H.R. 149A by Chip Roy. And then there's one, S as in Sam 669 by Mike Lee at Utah. And this is what it said. It's called the Defund Act. And this is what it stands for. Disengaging entirely from the United Nations Debacle Act. That's what it stands for. And basically, guys, what this says, and it's been around for the last 4 or 5 months, and Lee, Blackburn, and Scott actually co-sponsored this on the Committee on Foreign Relations. Termination immediately from the United Nations, no more funding, repeal the United Nations Headquarters Agreement Act, you're out of here, and it keeps on going on, and we're not going to participate in peacekeeping operations, the Blue Helmet program, like in Korea, like in Afghanistan and places like that. Now we're not going to do that any longer. And get out of our property, no more diplomatic immunity for all the folks that are actually in that organization. Get us out of the WHL permanently. Get out of all the convention agreements we had in the past. And never to enter again to the United Nations. No more reentry. That's what it says basically in the bill. Pretty cool, huh? S669. And that's still available, so I recommend all your listeners to send a letter to the congressman to support H.R. 1498 and S669, and so let you know those some good things are happening even at the legislature. I don't know if you guys are aware of that. Mm-hmm. That's cool. I actually did some history, and I looked in my past, and it says HCR 32 in 2012. Now listen to this. This was in New Hampshire. You can look this up. With complete withdrawal of members of the United States from the United Nations, so we can retain our sovereignty and control over the United States and our military forces. Representative Tregenza and Carr. I don't know if they're still in your legislature any longer, but they actually supported this bill in 2012 and 13, urging people to withdraw from the membership of the United Nations completely, and that was done on the state level, and they sent it out to Congress. So you got some guys, I don't know if they're still a member of your legislation, but hats off to those folks who recognize that UN is not a good deal at all. I must have helped them with that one when I lived there, but I can't remember the names per se.
Well, let me ask you this, Wayne, because I think if you were to do a man on the street and you were to ask the average person, what does the UN do in terms of benefits for the United States? Or, I guess you could word it another way. What's the logic behind selling out to the United Nations and to global interests? I don't think people actually understand any of this. They don't really understand what the UN is. They don't understand what the UN does. They don't understand what the ramifications are. So let's kind of flip that narrative on its head. If the United States were to exit the United Nations, what would the immediately noticeable impact be to the country, to our military, and to the citizens?
All good things. So our military would not be under the auspice of the United Nations. The Blue Helmet program would disappear. We would never gone into Korea or the Vietnam. You know that?
I didn't.
No, we'd never not have done that at all. Not at all. That was a UN deal. And what happens in the office of the United Nations down below, there's a lot of espionage work that goes on all the time. All those folks, remember Trump had this talk a couple of weeks ago, and he was saying, hey, you guys are a bunch of socialists, we'll never be another socialist government. You guys have talked about peace, but nothing ever happened about peace. It's all about war. So the benefit, there's no benefit, and it's only to foster world government. That's the whole reason why it exists. No, we had this thing called 10 Reasons to Get Us Out of the United Nations. So let me read this to you. I'll answer your question. Every UN Secretary General has been either a communist or socialist since 1945. Let me just go through the names to give you some ideas. Alger Hiss, communist, United States. Trygve Lie, socialist, Norway. Dag Hammarskjöld, socialist, Sweden. U Thant, socialist, Burma. Kurt Waldheim, Nazi, socialist, Austria. Javier Decelliar, socialist, Peru. Boutros Boutros-Ghali, socialist Egyptian. Kofi Annan was a socialist in Ghana. Ban Ki-moon, socialist in South Korea. And Antonio Guterres, he's a communist from Portugal. What do you think about that?
What I think is that we've been a part of an organization that has been hell bent on trying to bring about a one world government. You know, the type where you'll own nothing and be happy about it. And we are supposedly supposed to be the last bastion of freedom and liberty in the world. And in order to get their one world government, they have to supplant the number one thing preventing it, which simultaneously is also the number one force, I don't know, propping up everything that they decide they need to do. Every time the UN wants to do something, it's U.S. troops, U.S. arms, U.S. money that is backing it up, and at the very same time, they are wholly antithetical to everything the United States stands for.
Absolutely. Our rights come from God. According to the UN, their rights come from the organization called the UN. Here's a conclusion. This little article we wrote, 10 Reasons to Get Out, says the United Nations is not taking over the United States. What is really occurring in the United States is being delivered to the United Nations. That's what's going on. Piece by piece. Yep.
One of the things that I hear quite a bit is the UN's charter that would override the U.S. Constitution. I mean, we understand the sovereignty; they don't want American sovereignty, but the overriding of the U.S. Constitution. So, Article 25: members of the United Nations agree to accept and carry out the decisions of the United Nations Security Council in accordance with the present charter. That directly contradicts the oath of office for every single American politician, who has and military member, law enforcement officer, even town administrator. If you're sworn in, you swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States. Period.
Yes. Exactly.
And so we don't bow before foreign flags. We don't put foreign flags above our own, and we don't put other organizations' charters or their constitutions above our own. But yet membership in the United Nations specifically would require member nations and the legislators and representatives of those nations to disregard their own founding documents and put those in favor of UN charter documents.
That's correct. You're right, exactly right. UN Charter, Article 25, overrides U.S. Constitution, American sovereignty. Absolutely correct.
And then, of course, that brings up the question of, which is something that I think, if you were to talk about the negative consequences of being involved in the UN, I think at least every red-blooded American, at least every red-blooded Granite Stater would certainly tell you, I don't want them damn blue helmets coming for my guns. Because, that's exactly what it is. The United Nations wants complete disarmament of American citizens.
Oh, yeah, that's it. That's listed, too, in the articles. Absolutely guarantee it. No question about it in my mind. It talks about, it's really, UN seeks to disarm America. It's Second Amendment. Absolutely right. It's all involved in the arms treaty adopted in 2013 to ultimately disarm Americans, of course. But you're right, and Julian was right, is that it's all about world government. And you're right, they have to be here in the United States to subvert. We're the last, let's face it, guys, we're the last place, we're the last stand. And what a crazy, the Rockefellers put the UN right in the East River, New York City. Here we are, capitalist USA 1, right? Wall Street and all. And what a nice place to put it on the East River. But yes, it has been that from the beginning. As I listen to all the who's ahead of all the UN, they're all socialists and communists. And none of these guys are our friends. Trust me, none. You can look at the history. We have books called UN Exposed, Fearful Master. The things they did, atrocities over the years, absolutely unbelievable. But most Americans look at it as a building that'll give us peace. And Trump said, you guys talk about peace, but I haven't seen any of that. And he's very true. That's not what they're up for. It's a charade.
I got to be honest with you. Listening to the cast of characters that you listed off there for UN Secretary General, especially Boutros Ghali and Kofi Annan, it's kind of like, geez, why didn't Idi Amin have his day in the sun?
Let's see. I guess he was dead because he couldn't sign up.
Well, he was alive at one point. Come on. I'm surprised they didn't plug him in there.
Wow, huh?
So, and what I think one of the things that people would look at and say, well, okay, so we still have the Second Amendment. The Second Amendment is intact in this country. Just use it as an example. So if the Second Amendment is intact in this country, despite the overwhelming pressure from the United Nations and member nations for America to disarm, well, there's proof positive that we can still be a member of the United Nations, just playing devil's advocate here, that we can be a member of the United Nations, but we can basically be selective in terms of which one of their I don't want to call it mandate, but I guess for lack of a better term, we can be selective in terms of which of their mandates we choose to apply and employ, and which ones we choose to disregard and not employ. How would you respond to that pushback?
Okay, well, that hasn't been ratified by the U.S. Senate, number one. But let's talk about the ones that we're stuck with. How about WHO? We found that when we got COVID, didn't we?
Yeah.
And we just got out of that, right? Remember Kennedy said we got to get out of WHO. That was all over our head all day long. And they watched how the little mice did all the wonderful things of COVID. That was a good experiment, by the way. It all came out of the UN. I know the things we talk about sustainable goals. This is a thing that you guys really have to really understand. Here, it's like I said, I'll send you a copy of this. These are sustainable goals. There's 17 of them, right? And anything they talk about now, anything you'll hear about sustainability and sustainable goals is all UN driven. Those are the 17, anything you see locally, good old New Hampshire, where you all live, talk about air, about legislation, about redistribution of land, that's all fits with sustainable goals. Every one of those boxes has to get ticked off. Decent work environment, economic growth, affordable and clean energy. Have you heard that before? Climate action, life below the water, seas, right? Life on the land, gender equality. How about that one? Quality education, right? Zero hunger, lots of luck of that. No poverty, right? Sure. Sustainable cities, 15-minute cities, all comes out of here, pal, right here. This is it. It all comes out of here, out of those sustainable goals, there's 17 of them. When people really want to learn something about it, you study those 17 goals, and anything you see in your state legislation, as well as in the federal, all point to the 17 sustainable goals. That's their new rules. They play by the game. And Agenda 2030 is when they want to take over and finish up the game of world government. Yes, sir.
What I see to be a common thread within the 17 sustainable goals is that they have nothing to do with sustainability of the world population, nothing to do with the sustainability of individual rights or liberty or prosperity, everything to do with the sustainability of government control.
Yes.
Everything is about being able to control a very select few who have hyper idealistic goals about how they would like to run and manipulate society, being able to control the population so that the population, if you keep everybody within a 15-minute city and you restrict their ability to move and their ability to own things and say things and read things and learn things, and you have the ability to control their decision making by limiting their decision making capacity.
Well,
of course,
I'm sorry, but in keeping with that too, in the document that they put out there, the Freedom from War document, which was seeking to disarm every member nation, but what was really, and I'm paraphrasing, but it was we're going to disarm all of these member nations except for the arms that are necessary for internal programs. So it's, we're going to make sure that everybody's disarmed, but we're going to make sure that government officials have sufficient weaponry to be able to keep you in line.
Yeah, we call it, you see the picture over here, it's the old famous Blue Helmet program, right? That's it, betrayal in blue. That's it. Yeah. This is this magazine we published a couple of months ago, right? Global Power Grab. That's what it's all about, guys. Absolutely. It's been around. And they tout to that. Absolutely guarantee it. It's all about world government, and that is the head of all of it. WEF, all that emanates out of the United Nations. And it has been from the beginning. And so they dress it up as peacekeeping, humanitarian, but I mean, not at all, not even for a minute. So I asked, what good thing can you tell me really was a result of spending 12 or 13 billion dollars a year being part of the UN on our soil that you can point to and say, boy, am I glad you're part of the UN. Name me a couple of good things that come out of it. And yes, they did feed a couple of hungry kids someplace in Africa or Saudi Arabia over the years. But of course, they came with strings attached because they kept their communist socialist dictator in power. But what thing can you point to?
Yeah. I mean, to be honest with you,
Akon, a famous rapper, fed more, gave water to more, gave electricity to more.
Yeah.
So I say, why do I need the UN? I could just send Akon to go solve all the problems in Africa. He's done a far better job.
hey, I have the perfect solution. We get out of the United Nations and we send all of our tax-deductible donations to the Clinton Global Initiative because look at the great job they did down there in Haiti, right? Let's give them props for that.
That's a good deal. Yeah, sure. Why not?
Oy vey. All right, Wayne Morrow, we are flat out of time, unfortunately, but we're going to get you back on the program again. So
thank you, but gotta get us out. That's it. That's easy. God bless you guys back in New Hampshire. But yes,
God bless you, Wayne. Appreciate it. Wayne Morrow, CEO of John Birch Society. JBS.org is the website. Again, JBS.org, the John Birch Society. All right, that is going to do it for this Tuesday night edition of Granite State Live. Always a privilege and a pleasure to be with you each and every, or almost each and every Tuesday night. Of course, I was in the great state of Texas last week, back this week, and I will be back again next week as well to do it all over again. Until then, folks, stay safe, be well, and remember, civility does work. Be nice to one another. God bless everybody.